on, Tiger! We're running out of time!
Okay, so this is a video that I'm doing at myself. It's a video I'm also doing to the people that have enjoyed the Historathon videos in the past, because quite a lot of people, it appears, enjoyed the Historathon videos I did before. It's to my fellow co-hosts of the Historathon and to Vin, who created the event. I'm going to talk about the Historathon this year, and I'll start by saying how much I love the event and how pleased I am to co-host it a number of times. But I've fallen behind on reading history books, and I wanted to talk about it on the channel because I just kind of gave up on the second quarter, and then thought, okay, I'm just gonna have to just draw a line under that, move on to the third quarter. But it was kind of bothering me because I really wanted to read some of those books, and this happened last year. And in one of the discussions like in January when we first started up again, I said, I said to Vin, what if I treat the quarters loosely? And then he sort of went, well, that's just reading history books. That's not the event, is it? I was like, okay, yeah, fair enough, because it's a fair point. I'm just reading history books. But the Historathon did bring me back to history books. It was really nice. The first year I did it, I read quite a lot of history books, and you know, it kind of changed my priorities that year. And I read a lot more non-fiction than I normally would, and it was really cool. If you're familiar with my channel, you know that I read quite a wide variety of things, and they're always juggling. And with these different events that have happened this year, the monthly events and like the summer stuff, I've been juggling that with the things I've wanted to do myself as well, like the Ray Bradbury books and the trying to go back to science fiction, which I've been neglecting a little bit. So, you know, as a quick recap, I was doing the Historathon, which is a whole year thing, the Ray Bradbury deep dive, which I'm really enjoying because he's, you know, potentially, arguably, the contender for my all-time favorite author. Also the banned books, 24BB, that MJ started. I was doing that. And if we go right back, then I did Horror Mayhem as well, did June on the Range. I'm doing Rocket Summer in July. I'm going to do Garb August. Did I do something earlier in the year? Before Horror Mayhem? I think I did, but I can't think of what it was. But you get the point. They're always juggling all the time. And some people will say, I'm not going to do events for a while. But the events are really good for two things, really. For giving you a very specific and timely reason to read something, whereas you could easily put something off forever and then go, oh, I bought that 2 years ago, so I haven't read it yet. So that's a good thing. Obviously, it gets more diluted if you're doing that for loads of events and actually you're putting off loads of books because you're doing loads of events. That's true. But that is one thing. And two, it's just a really cool thing to share a themed book club, essentially, with other booktubers as well. So, you know, those two reasons are really big reasons to do the event. So I don't want to really just go, well, I'm not going to do it. But I have put myself in a funny position with the Historathon this year because I read so little lately. And actually, I've read, in June, I only read 3 books because of everything that happened in June. And May was all about Horror Mayhem. So there are reasons, but those reasons mean that all those books I was really excited to read, you know, like a lot about the Black Death. I'll talk about this book in a second. And I had a book about Robin Hood I was going to read, and a really big one I was really excited to read, and I'm so gutted I didn't get to it, which is partly the reason why I'm doing this video, was this one, the Crusades Through Arab Eyes. I bought this on the last London meetup, last time I saw Alice, and I bought this in the first book we went in, actually. Which was about 5 minutes after I picked this book out to buy. Me and Alice had a joke about Ursula K. Le Guin, because we were looking at her stuff on the shelf and we were joking about the fact that I recommended the word for world is forest to her, and she didn't like it. And I was like, don't give up on Let's Lacana Gwyn. But I really wanted to read this for the quarter two, the second quarter. This was such an important book to find. I was really excited about reading it, and I didn't get to it. And it's like, okay, move on now to the next period. And I'm going to basically play catch up, but it is difficult because my plan is to kind of honor all of the 4 quarters by reading something for all those quarters. And essentially, if I do read this in July or August and I'm catching up and it's not technically the second quarter anymore, I would feel like, but it's only a bit late and it's just me ending sometimes you go on like a further week when it's a monthly event. Sometimes you're finishing a book or something. So I'm kind of treating it like that. But I don't know how that's going to go. I don't know how far behind I'm going to get, and however I can honour all 4 quarters with what I'm reading, because I don't want to stop. I don't want to just concentrate on history books. So I do want to read other things, but I don't want to ignore history books either, which is what I've been doing the last couple of months. So this is a big reason why I feel like I still want to play catch up and not just abandon the second quarter. Okay. This book is interesting because I was excited to find it because I love the Black Death. I think it's a really fascinating part of history. It's one of my favorite things to discover and find out about. So this is a really specific thing, which I did talk about in one of my Historathon videos, one of my TBR videos. But it's a deeply academic book. It's from the Johns Hopkins University Press. It's a really specific thing they're talking about. I read some of it, and some of it's just like information, and it's just really, really specific. And lots of tables and historical facts. There's nothing wrong with that. But as I'm playing catch up, I was going to really take my time with this one. I don't think I'll get to this, and this will be the second time I've put this book off. So I don't even know if I'll end up keeping this book. But yeah, I was reading the one which was based on a historical analysis of the Black Death in England, which is a really good book. I was really enjoying that, and I did have another one as well. So yeah, basically, I've completely cocked up the second quarter of the Historathon, but I'm going to try and play catch up so that I'm still honouring all of the quarters. So hopefully I'll still read some third quarter stuff in the third quarter after I've caught up with some second quarter stuff. That's the plan. But you know, I'm going to talk about a few other books that I've been looking forward to in the historical context. But I'm also going to talk about one aspect of the Historathon which completely makes including these particular books really difficult to ram into the event parameters, and you end up just adding them to your reading but not to the Historathon. So I'm going to talk about that in a second, but just a big pause where I talk about how cool the other videos have been from the other co-hosts. So I know that Bill and Vin are history teachers, but a lot of the other videos are just really enthusiastic people who have got a passion for history that do these fantastic history videos. If you've not seen, because I haven't done a Historathon video on my channel for a while, if you haven't seen the other people's Historathon videos, they're so good. So I'll link, what I'll do actually, I'll link some of the specific videos in the description box rather than just their channels, because some of the videos are so brilliant and really interesting. So yeah, I wanted to say that because it's an honor to be part of the event, and I feel like I'm letting the side down a bit. Basically, I feel like if any of the other co-hosts are like, oh, when's Gareth going to do a video, then I apologize for that. But I'll just actually talk about 2 other books that I didn't get to in the first quarter. Yeah, so this is the one I was really pleased to find. To be fair, I only bought this just right at the tail end of the first quarter. And again, this was in the BookTube meetup. But Miracles of Our Own Making, The History of Paganism. I was really excited to read this. And again, I will read it. I might just squeeze in this with my reading anyway and not consider it a Historathon one because it's 2 quarters late. So that seems a bit like just going back to that question I asked Vin. This looks really, really good. So I'd read about it. I don't think I've seen anyone talk about it. I don't think I read about it, and I saw it in this shop. This really fantastic shop where I spent about 60 quid. And this was really cool. So Miracles of Our Making, History of Paganism is definitely one that I want to get to, but it's one that I definitely didn't get to. It's one I've skimmed past because time, history is about time, but time is our enemy all the time. And then the other one that I really wanted to get to and I didn't get to it, again, it's another one on my shelf waiting to read, is the Viking Britain book, which you know, I think that'll be a really interesting book. And I know Vin's got a very strong passion for Viking history and all Nordic stuff. So I'm sure he can relate to the idea that I do want to read this, but I didn't get to it. So I've picked out 3 other books that I wanted to read that were specific to certain times that I've still got time to include. These are, so this one's a quarter 3 book. So this is The Restless Republic. This is Britain Without a Crown. This is all about, so Anarchy looks into the period between when Charles I's head was cut off and Cromwell took over as like the result of the English Civil War. And then he was a protectorate for a while. He refused to be called a king. He was a protectorate. But then he cocked that up and Charles II took over. And that gap when Cromwell was in charge, this historian is calling the Restless Republic and saying that the royalty was kind of clearly, this is going to argue that it was providing some stability, which being an anti-monarchist myself, I'm intrigued to know what the argument is and whether or not I can just, you know, read it and go, oh yeah, cool, or if I'm going, really? So I don't know, depends. And it will depend on how much I remember from how much I studied that period, because I did study that period in quite a lot of detail as well, but I might have forgotten a lot of it. But I do want to read that. So that's quarter 3 stuff. And then there's a couple of books here from quarter 4, which this is a reread, to be fair, but it's one I wanted to read, Captives by Linda Colley. So I use this a lot in my studies when I studied history. And this is Britain, Empire and the World from 1600 to 1850. Actually, that's mostly 3rd quarter stuff. So yeah, I better keep that in mind, otherwise I get behind again. So Linda Colley is a really, really good historian, and she's much more of a modern historian. She's one of the historians that we were directed to, with a caveat that they were changing the way history is being looked at. It's a newer interpretation of history that I was looking at. So when I did historiography in my first year at university, did loads about historiography. That was what we were looking at. Some of the other historians that changed interpretations of history. So she's one of those, and she's really good. And then the other one, this is different articles written by several different people about immigration in the UK. So definitely want to read that. Still haven't got to it, but this is one that is ideal for the 4th quarter. So that's a thing. But let's talk about these 4 books. So these 4 books are funny because these don't fall into specific quarters. And if I'm just going to read history books that fit into the Historathon event, I'm going to keep putting these just going to keep putting them aside. So you've got this one, another one I bought in that BookTuber meetup, The Great Leveller, Violence and the History of Inequality from the Stone Age to the 21st century. So it's a huge span of time. And I know Mark from Booktime with Elvis was doing some of those kinds of books and reading bits of it when they applied to the quarter. But I find that quite hard to navigate because you end up just ignoring it because you don't, read a bit of it and then you read loads of other fiction stuff and you don't get back to it. I'd rather try and have that as the book I'm reading or one of the 2 books I'm reading. So I find that hard. But that's one of the things I would have to do for that if it was a Historathon thing. Same as this one is a really cool book I found called Africa is Not a Country, Breaking the Stereotypes of Modern Africa. So this would have been good Well, I don't know, actually. I could look at it because it could be based around a lot of it could be based around modern Africa. So it might still fit into the fourth quarter. But an important one, I think, because I have a very deep interest in the African continent. I've taught a lot about it in my music classes. There's so much significance in African traditions over here with our music and that. And I'd love to visit sub-Saharan Africa one day, like West Africa or something like that. But we'll see. But that's one I was kind of thinking for my 60th birthday, but that's a while away, thankfully. But yeah, anyway, definitely want to read this. Africa's Not a Country. So tell me if you've read this, by the way, because you might have read it. And then a couple of others, The Story of Russia by Orlando Figes. I've never known how to pronounce his name, but he's a really important Russian historian who did really important work. I think he did People's Tragedy, didn't he? I think he wrote the People's Tragedy. Can't remember. I think he did. But yeah, definitely want to read this. And because, again, it's one that spans a lot of time. So difficult to slip it into the Historathon. And this is one I really want to read. And again, you know, the non-fiction stuff has to be squeezed into the fiction stuff, because I do read mostly fiction now. But this is I was so excited to find this. Resistance to Christianity, a chronological encyclopedia of heresy from the beginning to the 18th century. This is right up my street, absolutely right up my street. I've bought a lot of books about the history of heresy and atheism and agnosticism and doubt and the whole debate around that kind of thing. And I find it really, really interesting. So, yeah, this is one I clearly can't say, this is the third quarter, this is the fourth quarter and all that. So I tend to, I've bought quite a lot of these more general books that only general in the time sense. They're not general. They have got a very specific theme, but it's kind of the time they're set in that makes them a bit more general. So, you know, that's the other thing about Historathon, that I want to read those as well, but I only have so much time to read, so much time in my day, in my week, and I'm reading fiction as well. And it's like, do I read stuff that's nothing to do with Historathon? Do I read stuff that's just to do with Historathon? Do I do lots of catch up? Do I abandon this altogether and stop the channel? No, I'm not doing that. So yeah, this is the problem. But at the moment, my intention is to do a bit of catch up, probably more August than July, and maybe there'll be a nice counterpoint to the nonsense I'll be reading for Garb August. So we'll see how we get on. But please tell me below if you think I should just relax, man, and just don't do events, or if I should do a specific thing to solve this, or if I should abandon everything else, stop being a musician, stop being a teacher, and just read all day. Or if any of the Historathon co-hosts want to say, don't worry about it, mate, it's all good, don't panic, we're fine, then that'd be nice. But anyway, that's my position on Historathon this year. It's been a bit of a toughie, partly because I haven't read that much in the last couple of months, and when I have, it's been a specific event that was just that month. I mean, I'm doing the book trek thing as well, which Vin started, and so far I've only read one book for that, and that's 3 months long, and I'm probably going to read the sequel. Funnily enough, Vin's reading the same thing, but again, that's something else I'm squeezing in. I forgot to say about the book trek one, and you know, that was another thing I tried to get involved with as well. So yeah, book events, eh? Phew, who'd have them?
Picture of what it's like to be you.